So let's go ahead and get started. Hello everybody. I'm Joe Workman, and this is my weavercast. On Wednesdays, we do this live show on basic topics around RapidWeaver and or just general web design. Today we're going to be going over MAMP, which stands for Macintosh, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. It's a play off the classic LAMP semantic, which is Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So today we're going to go over MAMP and kind of how we can use MAMP to mostly with a spin towards how we can use it to help out with our RapidWeaver sites, right? So that a lot of times, especially using PHP and things of that nature in your RapidWeaver page, you really need a web server to test things out. And sometimes you can't publish things to your web server because you don't want to go live with something until you make sure it's just right. So you don't necessarily want to publish it to your web server that's online, and maybe you don't have a test domain or a test server, right? But luckily we have a great utility called MAMP. So that's what we're going to be going over today. Okay. Basically, we're going to be going to mamp.info. And we'll see, this is the MAMP website. And what you can see is version 2 recently just came out. I believe it came out in July. And it basically just had some updates and whatnot. But, if you are running Lion, make sure you get version 2.0. So that I think 2.0, fixes any sort of issues that was going on with Lion. So make sure you have 2.0. There is a free version as well as a pro version, okay? The pro version really is made for people who are going to be using MAMP as like a production web server, okay? So if you're really going to be using MAMP as your production server to, go ahead and use it for your website and things of that nature, I don't use pro. I've never used it. I don't see personally myself using it. So today we're just going to go over the free version, just a real simple personal web server for your Mac. And so basically just click the download button. It'll download the zip file, and we're all intelligent here, and I'm not going to go through the install process, right? So download MAMP. It is free. Now, a lot of people go ahead and they've asked me, well, why do you use MAMP? I was actually at a web users group on a couple days ago, and the question came up, why do you use MAMP? Why don't you use the built-in web server that's built in right into OS 10, right? OS 10 ships with Apache. It ships with PHP installed. It ships with MySQL. Everything there is built into the OS. And yes, you can go ahead and configure all of that and use it directly in the OS. Definitely possible. There are a lot of great blogs and things to help give you tips and tricks of configuring it and using it. Okay. However, out of the box, the web server and the MySQL instance that comes shipped with OS 10 are really tied down. They're very limited. The configurations are pretty strict. So to really enable a lot of different things, you'd have to go and modify your PHP INI file and do quite a bit of work actually to get a really good working decent server running. So here comes enters MAMP. MAMP essentially is like an app bundle that lives in your application directory. And with one click of a button, a start button, you have a full-blown PHP, Apache, MySQL instance running for you. It's all self-contained within that application. And if we want to see it, right, let's just go ahead and open up Finder. And if we go to Applications, it stores a folder called MAMP. If I can find it, MAMP. Okay, so you see there's a folder here called MAMP. Okay, and all there is there's an app. Okay, you can open this app, and this is all there is to it. Okay, there's a couple buttons here. This for now. When you open up MAMP, it goes ahead and starts your servers for you automatically. Okay, but there's a preference to change that. Okay, now what you didn't see is it actually opened up a start page over here. So it opened up this page here. Okay, so this is the MAMP start page. Whenever you start MAMP, it will launch a local web server for you, and basically this is the start page. Just tells you, where your host is, where your ports are, what your username and passwords are for everything, so on and so forth. Okay. You can get there, of course, by clicking the Open Start page. If we just peruse through the preferences really quick here, start and stop. You can, of course, start and stop the servers whenever you start MAMP. Okay. Where do you want your start page to open up? So where is your start page? Okay. Ports. What ports do you want to use for Apache or MySQL? These are important. Maybe if you are using multiple web servers on your machine, you want to make sure that nothing else is using these ports. Okay, so 8888 is a pretty well-known port for Apache. The default, of course, is 80, which the default out-of-the-box web server on OS 10 does use as well. And then MySQL port. Okay, so MAMP it uses these two ports by default. I did not choose those. You can definitely change the ports to be whatever you want, though. Okay. PHP, you can choose what PHP version you want. It defaults to the latest and greatest, which is 5.3.6. Okay. And Xcache, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't really use caching in my PHP stuff right now. But if you know PHP and you're going to be using caching, it has a few different caching systems here available for you out of the box. Okay. And finally, we have Apache, and this is the one place where I actually do change things. By default, the document root here is, I believe it sets it to this MAMP folder here. It sets it actually to this htdocs. Okay, I like using my local sites folder. So in OS 10, in your home directory, you have a sites folder there automatically. Okay. And that sites folder is where I like to put a whole bunch of stuff. It's basically where I deploy stuff. So when I use RapidWeaver and I want to export a site locally, I export it to my sites folder, and then I start MAMP, and everything in that folder gets served up within the web server instance. Okay. So, but you can change it really to any directory you want anywhere on your hard drive. Okay. So let's quit this. There's another way that I actually prefer starting MAMP that, so I hardly ever, I'm going to go ahead and stop these servers here. So you see, I just stopped MAMP. The web servers are no longer running. If I try to go to this web page here, it's going to bark at me and say, boom, sorry, doesn't exist, right? So there's another way that I use to start MAMP. So I like to try to, I know I have, as you see here, a gazillion things in my dock, okay? But I don't really need to have MAMP on my dock, okay? So let's quit, okay? And there's a better way, or I don't know if it's better, it's how I use it, okay? Dashboard. I know Dashboard, a lot of people have kind of forgot about it. It's kind of a lost art, okay? Especially with Lion, it's slightly different now. It's no longer comes down on top of your desktop, right? Dashboard has its own dedicated space, okay? Now, I have it 2 monitors here, so it's on my other dashboard monitor over here, but I just dragged it over here. There's a little dashboard widget that comes with MAMP, okay? And you can install it. All you do is double click on it, and you install it on your dashboard. And quickly, you just go here and you click on Start Servers. Okay, as you see, bam, it has a little status here. We have green for MySQL and Apache. If we go ahead and say Open Start Page, okay, we'll see that MAMP did start. Okay, so now I have my web server again. I can go ahead, if we go to localhost HTTP, here's my test page, right? That's inside my site folder. So if we go to Finder, go to my home directory, and go to sites, okay, we'll see that I have quite a bit of junk in here, right? But of course, this index.html file is what's getting served up, okay? So when you launch MAMP, go to your start page, most of the time it's going to be localhost colon and then the port number that you've defined inside your MAMP preferences. So right up here we have port 8888, which was the preferences that we set up originally in the MAMP app. Okay. Again, I've changed my home directory for MAMP to my sites folder. Okay, so that I have all of these sites here. So if I were to go to localhost colon 888, here's, if we see here, here's a sandbox directory. Okay, I can go to sandbox here, and we'll see here that I have a sandboxed website this was published from RapidWeaver. Okay, and you see this is one of my new stacks. This is Samurai. Okay. Or a beta version of it, actually, that currently doesn't work. So let's go ahead and how do we use MAMP in our day-to-day world? Okay, how can MAMP be beneficial to us in our day-to-day runnings? What can we do with MAMP, and how can it help me build my websites better with RapidWeaver? Okay, so there's this effectively one way that MAMP is really going to help us out here. And that's really if you're going to be using PHP, okay? Because by default, most of your RapidWeaver sites are going to be HTML based, okay? So they're going to have a file extension called, I'm going to go ahead and open up a RapidWeaver file here really quick. They're going to have an extension of .html, okay? Such as this right here. Okay, so this is a test file that I did of my latest stack called Samurai. And as we see here, it's just a very simple one-page site, okay, that runs Samurai. Okay, now if we go into the page info for this page, we'll see, it's set to, this page doesn't need to be PHP, it's HTML. Okay, now if we see here, so we have an HTML page. And a trick that I use all the time, okay, to test things for my RapidWeaver pages is instead of publishing my page up to my web server, so every time I make a change, you can definitely go ahead and click publish. That way, you can push it up to your web server and then preview things, right? Now, there are other things that I've covered in previous webcasts, such as using the little preview menu down here, where you can definitely preview your pages and the other web browsers directly. So I can go ahead and say preview this in Safari, and then it's going to export this page and preview it directly in Safari for me. And of course, it opened it up in Safari over here again. So here's Safari, right? Conversely, I can also open this page in Firefox. Right, so I can go to Firefox. Firefox will be launched, and it's exporting it, launching Firefox for me, and here's my page in Firefox. Okay, so as we see here with Safari, we get cool, awesome 3D effects in Safari, and we have fallback animations in Firefox because Firefox doesn't support 3D transformations. But the whole point of this webcast is to really show you that HTML files can be previewed without really anything. All you need to do is export your website and preview it directly in a web browser. Okay? So all we have to do is, preview HTML pages directly in a web browser. There's no extra special things that you need to do. Now, in this method, if you wanted to navigate to multiple pages, that really wouldn't work too well. So what we could do is, of course, export our page. Okay, so if we go ahead and add a new page in here, I'm going to add a new stacks page. And what we're going to do is we're going to call this blog. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my Tumblr stack on here. Okay. So if you used my Tumblr stack before, you'll know that it does require PHP. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead in here and we're going to change this to be from index.html to index.php. Okay, and let's change the folder to /blog. Okay, and we're good to go now. Okay, let's go ahead and configure the stack. The default out of the box configurations are fine. Now, with the Tumblr stack, you'll probably know if you've used it that if you try to preview it inside RapidWeaver itself, all you get's a bunch of gibberish, right? And the same thing's going to happen if you try to preview this directly in, let's say, Firefox, or if we're going to try to directly preview this in Safari or any web browser, okay? You're just going to get a bunch of gibberish because PHP requires that you have a web server running to actually interpret your code before it's displayed to the web browser. So therefore, to be able to preview PHP files, we're going to have something running. Now, a lot of times people will just publish up to their web server online, and what if that's all fine and dandy, but what if your page has issues? What if you don't want your customer to see this potential thing right now, right? This new page. So, exporting it or uploading it directly to your web server online, unless you have a test server or maybe a test domain, like I do, I use sandbox.joeworkman.net, and that's pretty much like my playground. Okay, I use that to upload various things to test across multiple browsers, multiple OSs, things of that nature. But a lot of times it's just a lot simpler and easier to do it locally. And let's go ahead and look at that now. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out now that we've previewed this in Firefox, if you go ahead and click on the other page, it doesn't work, right? Because we've just previewed this one page in Firefox. We can't really navigate through the site. Okay, so let's show you how you can actually do that. So RapidWeaver has a full-blown export engine where you can go ahead and do File. You can say Export Site, okay, or you can do Shift-Command-E for export. So it says, do you want to save your file? Let's say sure. Let's go ahead and save our file. It prompts you for what directory you want to export your files to. And remember, we set our home directory for our MAMP web server to be in our home directory /sites. So I'm in my home directory. I go to /sites, and I want to publish this to a folder called Sandbox. Okay. Now, if you notice here, this actually already has some files in it. And what RapidWeaver will do is it will actually overwrite the contents of this folder with the contents of this site. So you don't need to worry about deleting the files. Normally I have a site file and I always export it. You can say make this the default export folder for this site. And basically every time you export this site, it will always export it to this one same exact folder. Okay, so let's go ahead and click export. And exporting the home page and the blog page, and we're done. Okay, we're done. It actually automatically opened the page for us in Safari. Okay, but if you notice, what it did was it opened with this file extension. Okay, so this works great for HTML files, but now if we navigate to the blog page, as you'll notice here, Safari says, hey, I don't know how to read a PHP page. So what it did is it just kind of opened that blog folder for us. Okay. So what we need to do is let's go ahead and I think we already have MAMP started. Yes, MAMP is started. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to go to http://localhost : our port number, and then we type in, we published it to the folder Sandbox. Okay. Now here we have my Sandbox page. We have the home page, okay, with everything here. And then if we click on the blog page, we'll notice that things are working now, right? Now my styles are a little bit funky here. It's because I didn't copy some of the CSS over that I had in my home page. But the point here is it noticed my PHP page, okay, and it's fully functional, just as if I published this to my web server, okay. If I published it up to joeworkman.net, everything is fully functional. These like buttons, the tweet buttons, everything with this PHP page is fully functional now. So this is pretty much the extent of how I use MAMP on a day-to-day basis, right? I can quickly start up a web server. where I can export sites, RapidWeaver sites locally to a single directory. I can then easily open that directory inside my web browser. Just make sure that we use a particular format here, localhost colon the port that we configured, and then your directory. Okay, and I can easily view my PHP pages, and it's as simple as that. That really is MAMP and what I wanted to cover today. We can dig in and look at some of the MAMP configuration files if you like. Please, if you have any questions, make sure you post them to the chat room so that we can make sure that we have all your answers questioned by the time we're done. Okay. So I'm going to really quit here. That's the quick demonstration of MAMP. It's really simple. It's free, so it's a no-brainer to go ahead and download it and use it to help test your PHP sites locally and not having to really publish. It's faster to export a site locally than it is to, of course, publish it to your web server. So your workflow should really benefit from this in terms of speed. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into Finder. We're going to locate our MAMP folder. Okay. Now in here, you'll notice a lot of times if you have maybe some errors, some PHP errors, maybe you have a syntax error in your PHP if you had hand coded some things, or you have some issues going on. Okay. You're previewing things and you're getting some errors. Okay. What you can do is MAMP has a log file directory. So again, it's just in your applications folder, and then inside there's MAMP, and inside this directory is logs. Okay, and as you see here, there's Apache error.log. So this is, of course, all of the errors that will be going on if you have some errors with your PHP in your site or things, anything that's to do with Apache. Okay, and we haven't really touched on how to utilize MySQL with MAMP. Okay, this is more kind of a RapidWeaver based stuff and really don't have a use for MySQL too regularly, unless you're doing a full-blown, maybe an e-commerce site or something of that nature. We're not really going to dive into MySQL here, but let's look at the Apache error log. You can go ahead and open this. Not sure what it's going to. Oh, it's going to open up in console.app. So the default log application for OS 10 is console. Okay, it's in your applications utilities folder. This is where you can actually view your log files. I'm kind of going off on a tangent here, but this is where you can go ahead and view all your log files for really any app for OS 10 in general. Okay, and then if your apps are having issues, like if you want to go ahead and type in RapidWeaver, okay, you'll see some errors that we see here, and as you see, we have some PHP fatal errors because it couldn't require these files. Okay, so and that's all because RapidWeaver doesn't have a built-in web server, right? So it couldn't find these files to go ahead and include, but once we published it to our site, we're fine. So while these are some errors that RapidWeaver had, they're not really any errors that's RapidWeaver's fault. But let's get back to the crux of things. We wanted to open up our PHP error log, and if you noticed, it's down here at the very bottom of the list. It threw it in here, and you can quickly view this. Okay. Now you can also view. Now, actually, what's kind of cool is if you have console open and you have this log file open, just keep it open while your web server is running and you're testing things, and you can it'll live update the file. So as the file is getting updated. Here, actually, go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and we'll stop Apache here. Go ahead and stop. And as you see, it automatically caught this sig term shutting down. Okay, so we'll see that this is live updating. So if you just have this file open in console as you're debugging or you're doing some things, you can see the errors live logging directly into this file. Okay. Now you'll notice that there's several different types of error categories with Apache. This is a notice, so most of these notices are going to be, you can ignore them. They're just kind of informational. It's a notice, okay? However, there's other things like these errors, okay, that definitely are something you might want to look at. As we see here, when I launched this in August 29th, when I tried to look at this sandbox site, it said file doesn't exist. That was because I forgot to change the default folder when I reinstalled MAMP on my machine from this htdocs from the default to my sites folder. So that's what generated this error. Okay, and again, this is just really a plain text file. So if you don't want to open it up in console.log, you can definitely right click and say open with and open it in your favorite text editor. Okay, it could be TextMate, it could be TextEdit. Okay, but it is just a text file. Okay, but the benefits of using console, the console application is it allows you to, it auto updates that log file. So as things are added to the log, it will automatically display those for you. Let's see. I have a question in the chat room about we're getting an error trying to open up MAMP servers, specifically the SQL. Any idea what I am doing wrong? Here is the error message. Got error 2002. Connect to my local equals MySQL server. So make sure you can go and check in these log files here. Make sure you check in the MySQL error log if you open up this. Open with console. Oops, that's not what I wanted to open it up with. Rats. I want to go ahead and open with console. Okay. As you see, mine is empty, but I check the logs, the MySQL error logs. Maybe MySQL didn't start up. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, if what you're going to be using MAMP for is what I'm demonstrating for you here, you really don't even need MySQL at all. I don't really use it, to be honest with you. I don't use MySQL, at least within MAMP, right? I do have a MySQL instance on my production web server that I store things like serial numbers for customers and other data, right? But for MAMP, really, I use it a very simplistic approach. I know, again, I'm not really a power user of MAMP. I know Apache and I know web servers, which is pretty much what MAMP is. It's just an Apache server. However, really what I use it for is to help me out previewing my RapidWeaver sites. Okay. So sorry I couldn't address or figure out your exact question. A lot of times that stuff like that, kind of got to kind of jump into it and look at things. But check out these log files. Maybe there's an error. If you really need MySQL, check out these error log files. Maybe something else is using the port. Maybe try changing the MySQL ports or the Apache ports to something different, and maybe everything will start up. Okay, because kind of getting Unixy here. Every application or every process that runs in your machine uses a port. So if it's going to connect, if anything is going to be connecting to it, it needs to run on a port. And a port is a specific number. And only one process can utilize a port at any one point in time. Therefore, if you're using an application, okay, let's say Yojimbo. Okay, Yojimbo is an app that I use to log all my, some ideas and stuff like that I have. And it has a web server. Now, I'm not exactly sure what port it uses, but let's say, for instance, I launched Yojimbo, launched its web server, its internal application web server, and it attached its web server to port 8888. Okay? If I were to go and try to start MAMP and left my port as 8888, MAMP wouldn't be able to start because something else is already utilizing that port. So, give a chance if maybe, you can look at these error logs. If it's something around potential port conflicts, just go ahead and simply go into MAMP, go into the preferences, change your ports, and you should be good to go there. Okay. Some other things, some more, maybe some hardcore, I guess you can maybe call it, things here. So there are this is a full-blown Apache web server. So you have full access to, configure your PHP INI files. Here's your http.conf file. If we go ahead and open that, you can see, I'm not going to start diving into all of the various potential configurations in here, but you can load Apache modules on here. And, if you really wanted to go gung-ho, if you wanted to change your port number here, I'd recommend changing, while you can change your port number in this file, I recommend changing it within the MAMP preferences, okay? I believe all the MAMP preferences do is modify this file for you and modify this port, and same thing with this document root, okay? Those things, I'd recommend just changing those in the MAMP preferences instead of trying to modify those directly in the http.conf. Because I do believe if you edit them here and you restart MAMP, MAMP will take what it's in its preferences and then just override this file anyway. So go ahead and those few things such as port and your document root, okay, make sure that you edit those inside your preferences. There's also a PHP INI file, and I'm not exactly sure. I know it exists somewhere in here. Okay, so as you see, it's in MAMP bin PHP, and then if you notice, there's two, and that's because there's two different PHP versions that we have that MAMP has running. We're currently running the PHP 5.36. So if you look down here at my path bar, you'll see that this is the file for PHP 5.36, which is what we're using. So you can go ahead and open that in your favorite text editor. Here it opened up in BB Edit, and you can go ahead and start tweaking any sort of PHP files here that you want. Maybe you want to change the log files that it logs to, or you want to turn on debugging display errors on the screen. Okay, this is actually something that could be potentially useful. By default, display errors is turned off, so basically errors are not displayed to the web browser. Okay, so if you just change this to on, okay, which is I actually want that, right? So I'm actually going to display that. I made this change on my laptop, but I didn't change it here. So I like this is a good thing I jumped into this file. So display errors, normally, again, default display errors is turned off. Okay, and the only place where you can look for any sort of errors is going to be inside those log files that we saw a couple minutes ago. But if you go in this file here and edit display errors equals and make that on, okay, then not all. There might be some errors that will still only display to the log files. So I still recommend you check those out. But errors will also be displayed inside the web browser. That kind of helps you pinpoint some things. Maybe if an error happens at a certain point in the page, it could, sometimes errors can be a little bit cryptic. So kind of knowing where in your page the error is happening and actually visually seeing it inside the web browser is definitely helpful. Okay, so this is something that I actually do change on my system. This is a clean install of MAMP that I have here, so I forgot to change it here. But display errors equals on is definitely a good thing. Okay, so I recommend doing that. Okay, let's go ahead and save that file. And I'm not gonna try to teach you PHP INI file syntaxes here or anything like that. But if you're willing to tinker with this file or learn some PHP and learn some web server juju here, be my guest. It's a full-blown web server. You have full control over the configurations here. Okay, so that really does it for what I planned on really going over today. Simple, short cast. We're just at about probably the 35-40 minute mark, something like that. Thank you very much for joining, everybody. I hope this overview of MAMP, kind of really helped you out a little bit. We didn't dive too deep into it, but I definitely tried to give you a good overview on how it could help you in your everyday lives of building RapidWeaver sites. And I hope you enjoy it. Until next week, I'll bid you adieu. Thanks, everybody. Bye.